This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
Who are you? How did you get in here?
You must forgive Ubu, Detective. He is well trained. Allow me to introduce myself. I am he who is called Raish Al Ghul.
The demon's head. I thought you were only a legend.
I am quite real.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Tim, former GameStop employee. My name is Tim, and we are on episode 201. We made it past the milestone, episode 200, and we're ready to do another 99, starting with this one. And joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Dane. Dane, how's it going?
Going good, considering everything.
Yeah.
I kind of wish, it's weird to say, but I was kind of hoping that nothing big would happen between our last episode and now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did record that one early, I think the week before that previous episode.
Yeah.
199. So, yeah, that was a little weird.
Well, nothing really big happened on the entertainment aspect and Batman and whatnot. So that was covered, but in the world, that's a totally different story. So we know things are pretty crazy out there, but hopefully this show can provide a little distraction and some entertainment, and just to hopefully get you through the day and the troubled times that we're facing right now. So, but before we get into the show, and sadly, it's not going to be a show that's totally full of good news, as some of the recent events that happened in the comic industry that we're going to be talking about. But before we get into all that stuff, we got to start, as we always do, with our Dark Knight Rises minute-by-minute commentary, as we are get into the nitty gritty of this thing, Dane. I think we'll see where we get to this minute, but we're winding down on the final big climactic battle sequence that's happening in the movie. So we'll see how far we get if we actually end it on this one. But we're going to be going from minute 149 to minute 150, or the 2 hour and 29th minute to the 2 hour and 30 minutes. So we're officially making the 2.5 hour mark here on the Dark Knight Rises. So we're getting close, like I said. So as always, you want to get your relevant media format, your VHS player, your Betamax tape, your DVD player, your Laserdisc, your HD DVD, your Blu-ray, your Netflix physical media disc, your Blockbuster video membership card, your projector, and your HD, or I should say, your VHS to DVD converted copy, and our new favorite, your DVHS copy, HD VHS, the way entertainment was meant to be seen.
That's just the Dark Knight Rises, but all of entertainment. It doesn't matter what kind of movie it is, it deserves to be on DVHS.
Yes, everything. It's like everything gets upscaled to the new format, whether it's HD or 4K. Now everything needs to be downscaled to DVHS. So if you got all those versions ready to go, I'll go ahead and begin the countdown. Are you ready, Dane?
Yes, I am.
3, 2, 1, play. As we get to actually one of my favorite parts of the movie, this was just such a great payoff to the Gordon and Batman relationship, and just Batman's dialogue, how he reveals who he is, not saying he's Bruce Wayne, but just how someone could be as important as putting a coat on a young boy's arm, letting him know the world hasn't ended. I just love that line. The only thing is that, Gordon had to get this flashback here as Gordon's trying to remember. You would think Gordon would realize it right away, and it wasn't like such a huge, like, confused shock to him. I would think Gordon would kind of No, because there's been stories where kind of Gordon always knew who Batman was, but as we expect, never mentioned it, never really decided to acknowledge it, but he knew deep down who he was. And this one, he just like completely dumbfounded and didn't have a clue. But a minor nitpick to an overall amazing moment.
Well, I mean, it was like 20 years ago, right?
True.
So 25 years or whatever. So.
Yeah, you could look at it that way. But it was such a, the Wayne murders is such a big story event in Gotham City. I think it would be memorable for him. But, again, small nitpick. And that took up the whole minute. So we are not out of the final climactic sequence yet. But we'll be getting there pretty soon. We'll see what happens to Batman and the bomb in our next minute.
It's one of those things where it's like, I don't remember the scene being that long, when I first saw it or when I saw it for the 15th time or whatever. But doing this commentary, I mean, it's the same thing with Blake and Wayne Manor.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't remember it being this long, but I guess it was.
At least we get different visual cues and scenes in the sequence. It's not just one scene like Bruce and John Blake in that one room for a whole bit. That felt like 10 hours.
Right.
But yeah, we're officially at the 2.5 hour minute mark, and that means we're pretty darn close. Ooh. Getting goosebumps just thinking about ending this thing. How far we're at now.
So finally be over.
That sense of relief, but yet accomplishment that we'll be feeling once we get to the end of it. So stay tuned for that as we make it through these next couple of weeks and episodes. But to get rolling with our feature topic on this episode, it's unfortunately going to be a sad one, as just yesterday, as we're recording this episode on Saturday, June 13th, on Friday, June 12th, it got announced that legendary comic writer Denny O'Neil passed away. And this was one that hit pretty hard when it comes to the comic creators and people in the industry that we've had so much respect for, and for me personally. Just thinking back to when I was kind of growing up with Batman the Animated Series, that's kind of what I was getting into that series, which obviously everyone knows I love and have great respect for. That was when I kind of first started getting familiar with creators and writers who worked on not only on that show, but as I loved certain episodes and would see writers, would later find out that, they've actually worked in the comic industry and were comic writers, and wrote some of the stories that I'm seeing on screen in comics first. So Denny O'Neil was probably the first one who I became familiar with and kind of learned more about through Batman the Animated Series, as he wrote one of its best episodes, The Demon's Quest, which is based on one of his iconic stories, which we'll be talking about in a bit here. But he was kind of the first who I learned about being someone who was a legend in the comic industry. Obviously, growing up as a little kid, I knew about Bob Kane being the creator of Batman. Well, back then, only knowing him and not realizing the importance of Bill Finger just yet. And Stan Lee. Those are kind of my first two comic creators that I knew of growing up as a young kid, like around 5, 6, 7 years old. And like I said, with Batman the Animated Series, getting familiar with more. And Denny O'Neil was the first one who I really became familiar with, and the importance of his work that he laid out in his stories. Not just with Batman, though. His contributions to Batman are so significant, but with other characters in DC, and obviously has a history with Marvel as well. But I've always enjoyed hearing Denny O'Neil once I learned who he was through the animated series, and then seeing some comic documentaries that would pop up here and there, and later on some special features on DC movies, whether it was live action or animated ones, where he would always kind of be the go-to comic creator that would always be talking on those special features or documentaries. And I just always loved hearing him talk. He just had such a passion for these characters and these stories, and just had a humble way of talking about his stories and his creations, because they were so significant, but he never came across as someone who was bragging about it or saying how important his significance were. He was just very humble and just always went back to saying he wanted to tell good stories with these characters. So I always loved hearing him talk, and always enjoyed and looked forward to hearing new interviews with him as we would get more documentaries and discussions on specific characters and stories. So I always loved hearing about that. And that kind of started at a young age for me, where I was learning and watching those early documentaries about comics and learning how important Denny O'Neil was. So this was definitely a sad one to learn about yesterday, as we found out that Denny O'Neil passed away.
Yeah. In fact, Denny O'Neil was the first. Actually, you see, I'm trying to remember, but it was Denny O'Neil was one of the first Batman comics that I ever read. It was the Batman Shaman storyline in Legends of the Dark Knight.
Yeah, the first story arc in that series, I believe.
Yeah, the first story arc. If you haven't read it, it's a little more of an in-depth look at that year one story. Where did Bruce go to learn how to become Batman? Right. So he goes to I think it's Alaska with some of the indigenous people of Alaska. But yeah, it's just a more in-depth story about the year one story. And it was one of those situations where I'd read comics before, but I didn't know that you could do a story like this in comics. It's just one of those sort of classic stories where you just realize that, you can write a Batman story, but you can add all this depth to it. And I think going through his career, I think that's what Denny O'Neil is going to be known for, is that you can have this medium, you can have this wacky character like Batman and the Joker and Penguin or whatever, but then you can have this more in-depth look at, or you can bring these adult themes to comics. And I think that's what he will be known for, or at least that's what he is known for in my head.
No, totally. I mean, this is, I feel, one of the aspects of Denny O'Neil that is kind of underrated in a way, because at least not amongst hardcore comic book fans, but for general comic readers or people who know about certain big comic stories, like for instance, The Dark Knight Returns and Year One, those usually get credited kind of in mainstream media as far as the stories, and Frank Miller being the one to bring the darkness and grittiness back to Batman after years of being campy thanks to the 66 show. And that is definitely, that is not true. He definitely took it to another level as far as making Batman darker. There's no doubt about that. I'm not knocking those stories in any way, but I always felt that Denny O'Neil kind of got shortchanged in certain aspects as far as not getting the recognition he deserved, as far as bringing Batman back to his roots from those first Bill Finger, Bob Kane comics of Batman being a dark character, even a loner in aspect. I mean, one of the first things he did was send Robin off to college and to have Batman have more stories with Batman working solo. But just that aspect of bringing the character back to a more serious tone, and just that, creature of the night aspect of the character that was first established in those early comics, and going along with Neil Adams' art, which is one of the best Batman designs I love in those comics in the 70s. So just him establishing and bringing that aspect of Batman back is so important to the character that I just feel doesn't get recognized enough. And it paved the way for stories for The Dark Knight Returns and Year One and stuff that Frank Miller did to kind of take it to the next level in the decade to follow. But it all started with Denny O'Neil kind of wanted to bring Batman back to his core and what the character is all about, and fully moving away from the campiness and the quirkiness that the comics were being most of the time, thanks to the TV show, and just moving away from that. I think the importance of that cannot be understated. And just to kind of talk about some of those issues that are the standouts in that, I mean, it's not just Batman, but with characters like his villains, like Two-Face and Joker being the big one. And one of his most famous stories, Joker's 5-Way Revenge in Batman issue number 251, which brought the Joker back as a murderous psychopath criminal, taking out his former gang members who kind of ratted him out and sent him to prison. And you kind of don't think about this a lot, since obviously we weren't around in that era, but just how Joker really turned into a gimmicky villain who was just there causing pranks and trouble for Batman, not really causing a threat to Gotham City or to Batman, but just more of a nuisance than anything. But here he was on a killing spree, and Batman had to stop him. And it was just an issue that brought that version of the Joker back, and the one that, again, just paved the way for future stories where we got Joker becoming someone who just, as he's always been Batman's greatest foe, but for the things that were to happen eventually later on in the decades to follow, be without question becoming Batman's greatest foe, his arch nemesis, and the effect that he's had on Batman's life and what he's done to him with the dark and evil things that Joker has done, not only to Batman, but to others in Gotham as well. So it kind of started with bringing that character back into that big threat that it was always meant to be in this issue. And again, another animated series connection. That's issue. The final act is pretty much the final act of the issue or the story, The Laughing Fish, where Batman duels the Joker in an aquarium, fights against a shark to save in an aquarium aqua tank with trying to rescue someone who's tied up, and Batman has to take down a shark and stop the Joker. And certain images and dialogue are just taken right out of that comic, and I love that. How we get these classic stories that Denny O'Neil did and were paid with respect in Batman the Animated Series, and adapting them and telling them in just as great as way, and even better, I will say, in another issue I'll be talking about here. But again, not just Batman, but other characters in the Batman mythos that Denny O'Neil just brought back to how they were supposed to be, so to speak. So it was just, he paved the way for so much of what we expect and take for granted in Batman stories. It all started or got back to that point once he took over Batman in the 70s. So the importance of that, I feel, cannot be understated. And I just hope kind of gets more recognition down the line as him really being the one to get Batman back to how we know and love him to be today. So hopefully that will happen. Again, it's just mainly not those who are hardcore comic fans who read and breathe the stuff for the entire life, but kind of more on the Main Street level when you get news stories and media outlets talking about Batman becoming a dark character starting in the 80s with Frank Miller stories. Hopefully they can get more recognition and they realize it happened a little bit before that, and it started with Denny O'Neil.
I'm just looking through his DC bibliography or whatever. I see one, Superman versus Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I believe he's been saying that is one of his favorite stories that he's written.
Really?
I haven't personally read it. I've seen the cover for it, which gets talked about a lot when discussions on Superman's comic history. So that should be one I'll probably have to check out. But some other of my favorite stories of his, and last night once I had a chance after learning about his passing, was wanting to read some of his more famous one and my favorites of his stories, like Joker's 5-Way Revenge. And of course, you can't forget about the contributions and creations he added to the Batman mythos. And I think there's none probably bigger than his issue with the first appearance of Ra's al Ghul in Daughter of the Demon in Batman 232. Another episode, as I referenced earlier, issue that was adapted to an episode of Batman the Animated Series written by Denny O'Neil. And again, that was my first exposure to that story. But going back and reading Daughter of the Demon for the first time, again, just being amazed of how great it was, seeing how closely and faithfully they took that story and adapted it into animation with a few changes here and there. But I always love it, especially as a young fan during the airing of Batman the Animated Series, knowing how faithful and close some episodes were to the comics once I got a chance to read them as I was a little older, and just how faithful they were to it. I think Daughter of the Demon is a great example of that. But to do kind of the impossible when it comes to Batman in creating new iconic villains, he created one of the most iconic with Ra's al Ghul. And not to mention the League of Assassins, the Lazarus Pit, Talia, all that aspect that I think has really transcended just the Batman mythos, as we've seen with Ra's al Ghul showing up in other DC stories. Obviously, he was a big focal point in Arrow in seasons 2 and 3 with Ra's al Ghul in the League of Assassins, Talia, and just playing in other DC story arcs and comics that's not just focused on Batman. Ra's al Ghul, he will always be known as a Batman villain, but I think in a way has transcended that. It has become more of a big main DC villain in a way too. And that just speaks to the genius of the creation of his character and what Denny O'Neil did for creating a legendary Batman villain now. And there's always kind of, I remember in certain discussions, whether it was with friends or online discussions back in the day, as far as the most iconic villains or Batman's greatest villains, we all know it's always going to be the Joker as number one. But I remember debates of how Ra's al Ghul kind of climbed the charts as far as being Batman's greatest enemy. And even in the animated series, Batman says Ra's al Ghul is his greatest enemy. So I think it's always goes back, if you were to have a debate between Batman's greatest foe, we know it's the Joker, but I think if anyone's going to challenge that, Ra's al Ghul usually is the one who comes up next as far as being Batman's greatest enemy. And so I don't think that can be dismissed either, as far as the great importance of what Denny O'Neil contributed to the Batman mythos and creating one of his greatest villains ever that has lasted decades and has been used in so many different stories. And again, not just in Batman, but in other DC character stories as well. So another just amazing accomplishment for creating such a well-liked, I should say, amongst the fans, not liked because we like him as a villain, but a character who makes for a good villain and foe for Batman that fans have just enjoyed reading stories that included him for decades. So yeah, just another great aspect to Denny O'Neil's impressive resume when it comes to comics.
Did you see he also brought back Professor X in X-Men?
Yeah, that was something I didn't know about until recently, as far as stories being written about his contributions to the comic industry as a whole once we learned of his passing. So yeah, I'm not too familiar with his Marvel career, to be honest, but that's pretty big too when you bring a mainstay in like Professor X back into X-Men. I should probably look into reading more of his Marvel stuff too eventually. Hopefully a lot of his stuff is on Marvel Unlimited. I got to check that, because a lot of the issues, some of his big issues on DC are available on the DC Universe app for you to check out, like Daughter of the Demon and Joker's 5-Way Revenge. And then the other issue I just got to talk about, and just might be my favorite of his, is There's No Hope in Crime Alley in Detective Comics number 457. I've said many times on this podcast how Appointment in Crime Alley is my second favorite episode of Batman the Animated Series. I feel is an underrated one. And that was another episode that was adapted from a comic. And it was this comic by Denny O'Neil, which I've said why I love that episode so much, so I won't go into full detail. But this issue is what inspired that episode and the themes in that episode to be so impactful for me. Batman going down Crime Alley. It made it the point that every year he goes to Crime Alley and he doesn't even tell Alfred why. It's a mystery to Alfred, and he's there looking for Leslie Tompkins. And Leslie Tompkins doesn't know that he's Bruce Wayne in this issue. And that's one aspect where I felt the episode in the animated series was an improvement on this comic, because that dynamic and close relationship that Batman and Leslie have, knowing his identity and what he went through, makes it that much more special. But in this comic issue, she doesn't know who he is, but she feels it's important to help whatever way she can in Crime Alley because of what happened to Bruce and his parents on that night. And Bruce realizes that, and obviously that's why he views her as a close friend and as a mother figure. But speaking of Leslie Tompkins, I mean, another great character that Denny O'Neil created for the Batman mythos in this issue. And she's always been one of my favorite supporting Batman characters for the role she played in helping Bruce just get through the murder of his parents on that night. Because I like how this issue really brought home how, while the police that were there were just there focusing on the murder of the Waynes and trying to find out who did it, there was no one really there to comfort Bruce except Leslie Tompkins, who was there and who comforted him. And again, playing that mother role that Bruce had to have after he lost his mother in that murder. And it just, again, paved the way for such a great relationship between Batman and Leslie once in stories where she does find out that that Batman is Bruce Wayne. So just great stuff with those two characters. And there's one moment that I really love in that issue where he saves Leslie from these two muggers and they pull a gun on Batman. And he just kind of loses it and just yells at him, like, "You dare point a gun at me at this spot." Obviously, they don't know what he's referring to, but for Bruce in that moment to have a gun pulled on him in the spot where his parents were murdered. Of course, he's going to go off and just kind of lose it against those criminals, and Leslie has to pull him back to get his composure. But just a great look into the psyche of Batman there. And again, just why he does what he does, the importance of what drives him as a hero for what happened to him as a kid. So just a lot of stuff in that issue that, and in that story that as a Batman fan, I always enjoy reading, and it's just really impactful for someone who obviously puts big importance and on that origin story of Batman and just what drives him to be a hero. And I think that issue and then later paved the way for that episode in Appointment in Crime Alley. That's why I love it so much. So that just might be my favorite Denny O'Neil issue. And again, I haven't read all of them, but that's one that stood out to me ever since I read it after watching that episode, Appointment in Crime Alley, and just enjoying it so much.
He also named Optimus Prime.
Oh, really? Man, see, that's something I didn't know about him at all, or he had any connections to Transformers.
Says, while working for Marvel, he helped write the original character concept for the Transformers and is credited as the person who named Optimus Prime.
Man, just another feather in his cap as far as creations go. The guy's a legend. And
of course, he also created he also created Azrael.
Yeah, that was something I actually kind of forgot about. Obviously, during this time, he was an editor on Batman, the Batman title, and he created Azrael, which paved the way for Nightfall, and that is another contribution that I got to give him props for. Just as an editor, crafting and piecing together that major story arc that, for me as a young comic fan, was the very first comic story arc I followed, and couldn't wait to get every new issue of that story once I got caught up in the midst of its run. I wasn't there for the beginning, but I got there in the middle. And again, being my first comic event that I followed was such a big deal for me. And the fact that Denny O'Neil was behind it, again, just speaks to the respect that I have for him and just admiration I have for him as a comics creator. And before that, though, one of the other big events he was in charge of, Death in the Family, with the death of Jason Todd. And you can hear him talk about that on a lot of different interviews and documentaries of just what a controversial moment that was for him, and just how that whole aspect of the phone lines of how fans could decide if he lived or died. So just that whole aspect was just so different for the comic industry at the time. So yeah, man, his work, his creations are just stamped in the edges of Batman history, and just for going to be remembered forever. And because, as we're just talking about it, all this stuff that he issued and created into the Batman mythos is, in a way, stuff we just take for granted and thinking that it's always been there. And that's kind of, you can have that attitude for a character who's obviously been established for so long now, but you just kind of forget sometimes the different eras of when these things get created and when they happen. And it's just important to look back to see who was behind it and added those creations and additions to stuff that we love about Batman so much, and just learn about the creative talent behind there. So it's kind of good to do some homework a bit if you become a new fan of these characters and these stories, and just to learn about who's behind it and who brought some of your favorite stories and characters that you're enjoying today. So hopefully those who are kind of new into the comic industry or to just the Batman mythos as a whole and like these stories that we're talking about here and these characters and aspects of Batman, will be able to learn about Denny O'Neil, all the great stuff that he did. This is just for Batman that we're talking about, but as you're making me aware, Dane, it goes way beyond Batman and DC Comics with Marvel and Transformers now. But staying on the DC front, I mean, I'd be remiss if we couldn't talk about his work on Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Green Arrow series, which I've read a while ago. It's something, I have a trade that I've been wanting to reread for a while, and I'm sure a lot of those issues are probably available digitally. But again, that's another legendary run that on two classic DC characters. Obviously, Green Lantern is my second favorite DC character after Batman, and there's been some monumental issues that Denny O'Neil did, and the most famous one was Green Lantern 76, dealing with the issue of racism and talking about something that is relevant now more than ever, with the issue of racism. There's any comic fan would recognize that panel as Hal Jordan is talking to a black man there who says, I've been reading about your work, Green Lantern, how you work for the blue skins and you help the orange skins, the purple skins. But then he asks him, you never bothered with the black skins. And I want to know how come. Like, answer me that, Green Lantern. And just how powerful and impactful these panels are, and how Jordan's response, he just hangs his head in shame and goes, I can't. And it brings it all home just to the powerful themes that comics can have and bring to the forefront. As you're talking about, Dane, some of the stuff he brought into the comics medium that you wouldn't normally expect at the time. And we see a lot of these important themes like racism be shown in comic stories. But this is one of the first ones where it really brought it home and how impactful and powerful it could be. Because it is such a great point when you think about it. Green Lantern, this intergalactic police officer helping all these different alien races and species that look different, but yet he doesn't have an answer to a big problem on Earth regarding racism here for one of his own kind, a human being. So just very powerful stuff that Denny O'Neil has worked in his comic stories, and especially in this one with Green Lantern and Green Arrow. There's also the other famous story of Green Lantern or Green Arrow where Speedy becomes addicted to heroin. I've actually never read that issue. I believe it's in the trade, but that comic one is like that cover for that comic gets referred to a lot when referring to comics telling stories about drug addiction. So he just not only created great characters, he just tackled the important themes in society as well in these stories, to give young readers at that time a look at some of these issues that are facing the world and how to kind of cope with them and deal with them in certain aspects too. So again, him tackling these important issues in comic stories can't be understated for his importance into the comic industry as a whole, not just focusing on specific characters like Batman, but just in general really brought and laid the groundwork for other writers to do and tackle with important issues that would come up as well. So again, just everything about his legacy is just, I think, legendary. And he'd have to be put up there, in my opinion, as some of the, when you talk about the greats in comics, and if you're going to be specific about Batman too, he'd probably be in like my top 3 comic creators of all time, just for all the additions he's added, the important issues he's tackled in his stories. It's just phenomenal, the resume and work that Denny O'Neil has brought to comic fans and superhero fans over the decades. And that's why it was just so sad to learn of his passing. So Denny O'Neil, you'll be missed, but your work will never be forgotten.
Yeah, and like I said before, bringing these adult themes into comic books is what he will be known for, and it's a great legacy to be known for. But I think, more than anything, it's you can't have Frank Miller, or you can't have Alan Moore, or you can't have whoever else you want to lump into these sort of adult-centered, comic creators. You can't have those people without Denny O'Neil. Mm-hmm. And I think that it will be his legacy. And it's a great legacy. Really, it really is.
Without question. Yeah. He'll be forever remembered for the work that he did in the comic industry and beyond that. All right. So that was our tribute to Denny O'Neil. Again, a sad topic to be talking about, as we lose another great and a giant in the comic industry. So, but there is no way we couldn't do an episode and pay honor to Denny O'Neil for everything that he's done in the superhero comic genre. But moving on to some news topics, we got saying on the comic front here, an announcement just a few days ago where Detective Comics issue 1027 is coming pretty soon. And it's actually going to be an anniversary issue of Detective Comics number 27. And this is actually pretty cool. This wasn't something I didn't think was on the radar of happening, but it makes total sense that you would want to honor the anniversary of Batman's first appearance in Detective Comics number 27 1,000 issues later. I was almost going to say 1,000 years later. Don't know what Detective Comics number will be on 1,000 years later, but
like
1,000
8 billion, I
later.
think. 8 billion. 8 billion. Let's stick with that.
2,027,000,027. So yeah, Detective Comics issue 1027 is going to be coming out on September 15th, and it's going to be an anniversary size issue. I believe it's 144 page, and it's going to be one of those issues that have a bunch of different creative teams on there. You're going to have writers like Greg Rucka, Grant Morrison, Tom King, James Tynion, Dan Jurgens, Marv Wolfman, Brian Michael Bendis, Scott Snyder, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Matt Fraction, Mariko Tamaki, and artists like Chris Burnham teaming up with Grant Morris again. You got Ivan Reis with Scott Snyder. That has me excited. I love Ivan Reis's art, especially on Green Lantern, and seeing him team up with Scott Snyder for a Batman story should be cool. So yeah, this is going to be a cool one to get, kind of in the veins of Detective Comics number 1000, I guess. So we'll see how it compares to that as far as an oversized issue telling different Batman stories. But the synopsis of it reads that Batman and his allies will have a mountain of mysteries to solve, taking them from the seediest corners of Gotham City to the farthest reaches of the DC universe, plus a few early hints in what's in store for the future of the Caped Crusader. So yeah, this will be one to keep an eye on. I know my comic collecting isn't what it used to be now, and just comics in general not being released as regularly due to COVID. So hopefully things will be picking up again. With issues coming out regularly, and this one I'll probably be checking out, though. I'll still always be checking and getting these monumental anniversaries issues that happen over the course of these titles run. So definitely keep an eye out for this one. Just because we're talking about Denny O'Neil, would have been cool if he was able to contribute to a story here before his passing, which to kind of be a send-off, I guess, for maybe a last Batman story, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. But still looking forward to seeing what all these other talented creators and their stories they have to tell in this issue. So look out for that in September. And then moving on to some movie news, one good, one not so good. But there's been reports coming from Variety that just when I thought Henry Cavill probably wasn't going to be suiting up as Superman anytime soon, it looks like that is not going to be the case, as Variety is saying he is in talks in negotiating a new deal with Warner Brothers to reprise his role as Superman, not in a new Superman movie, which I would absolutely love, but just to kind of show up and do some special appearances in future DC movies. Like, they didn't say which ones, but I think it's going to be either Shazam 2 or Black Adam. Those make so much more sense, especially since he kind of showed up in Shazam, the first one. Though my first reaction when I saw this, I was thinking, could they go back and reshoot that ending of Shazam so we can actually see his face this time? That's just one of the things that bugs me about the whole scenario with what happened in the DC shared movie universe, where you got all these characters, you could use them, but yet you have to hide his face because Henry Cavill wasn't available at the time. We didn't know if he was ever going to be Superman again. So it was just a whole mess. While I think that scene is cool, it's just, didn't reach its potential as how awesome it could have been if you actually saw his face. But I don't think they're going to do that. Wishful thinking on my end. But obviously he is in that Shazam movie universe, which is in the main DC EU. We know that's not going away. There's certain aspects that'll probably be different. But if Henry Cavill is back as Superman showing up in these movies, I think I'm all for it. Hopefully that might pave the way for him getting his own standalone movie again. So I think certain things with the Zack Snyder Cut of Justice League coming, it's going to allow, I think, these characters to live on or these iterations of these characters to live on beyond that, maybe than I originally thought, because I was under the impression, we know Ben Affleck's gone. I really didn't think Henry Cavill was going to come back. But the fact that it looks like he is, and it's not a done deal yet, but it gets me excited knowing that we haven't seen the last of his Superman, because I love his take on the Superman, even though certain aspects haven't been the greatest. But I know the potential for him being a great Superman is there, and we've seen it in movies. Like, obviously, I love Man of Steel. I just wish it kind of would have grew beyond that for what we saw. In the direction they took with him in Batman v Superman. But then with Justice League, that got more to a point of Superman that I love seeing, and Henry Cavill did a great job there. So I'm just excited to hopefully see him again in future DC movies. So that was good news to hear. But then conversely,
is that Black Adam movie still coming out? Because it feels like I've been hearing The Rock talk about that for like 10 years.
yeah, you're almost right. He's been talking about and connected with it for a long time. And they're actually supposed to start filming this year, but due to COVID, had to be pushed back again. So,
of course.
It should hopefully eventually get off the ground soon.
It's still not happening.
It is becoming one of those things, well, believe it when you see it type scenarios for the Black Adam. But as of right now, it's still supposedly supposed to happen.
Just like that Flash movie.
Yeah.
I mean, what's happening with that?
I know. That's in worse limbo. I think we're definitely going to see Black Adam before we see that Flash movie.
Yeah. Not to mention your favorite Green Lantern.
This was supposed to be the year when the Green Lantern Corps movie is supposed to come out. Remember when Warner Brothers released that movie slate? It was like before Batman vs Superman even came out. Green Lantern Corps was supposed to be in 2020, so I'm excited. It's going to happen, right? I mean, there's still a chance, right?
I think what they meant was an animated movie, Tim. An animated movie.
See, I would take that.
That's what they meant. That's what they meant, Tim.
Sadly, that's not even happening. We're long overdue for a Green Lantern animated movie. But
when was the last one released?
When the live action movie came out, the 2011, there was Green Lantern Emerald Knights, which was an anthology based movie, which was really cool. I liked it a lot, but it's kind of one of those things. Once the movie failed, it was like, oh, we got to stay away from everything Green Lantern now. Which is disappointing because they were kind of teasing during that time that Sinestro Corps War would have been a possibility for a comic story for them to adapt. And I would love to see that be an animated movie. That would be amazing. So if they could bring Green Lantern back more so in these animated movies and get that storyline adapted, I would be one happy Green Lantern fan because that's just begging to be adapted for a massive epic movie.
You're not going to believe what I've been watching.
Ooh, what have you been watching?
So, HBO Max came out between our episodes, and I was kind of just not let down because I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of content on there, but just sort of let down by like that the content there wasn't what didn't interest me at all. And so I was just browsing through all of their content. I like how they have all the studio. Is it Ghibli or is it Ghibli?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ghibli. Or let's say Ghibli. They have pretty much all their movies. They have the Harry Potter movies. They have all of these different sort of movies, but they don't really interest me. The one thing that interested me, Tim, because I was just like, you know what, maybe I should just cancel my HBO subscription just until something interesting comes along that I really want to watch. But then you're not going to believe this, Tim. So make sure you're sitting down.
Oh, I'm at the edge of my seat.
I started watching Doom Patrol.
Ah, nice.
And it is really, really well done.
Isn't it?
I know nothing about the Doom Patrol. I did nothing. I don't know who the heroes are, or the villains, or the anti-heroes, or whatever. I don't know anything about them. But I watched this show, Tim, and it is really, really well done.
Yeah,
I love the cast. I love Brendan Fraser as
he's great.
Robot guy. Is her name Diane Guerrero? I like her as Jane or Hammerhead or whatever you want to call her.
Yeah. All her 70s something personalities.
Yeah. I love the burnt guy. I forget his name. Negative Man. Yeah. I love that old actress Rita.
Mm.
everybody. I love everybody in the show. It's a great cast. It was casted really well. And I know a lot of people have problems with the swearing and stuff. I mean, there's nudity in the first episode, which really surprised me. I was like, wow, DC is really going for it, or Warner Brothers is really going for it. But it's not gratuitous, and it's nearly the perfect show. And the second season is supposed to be coming out pretty soon, right?
That's a couple of weeks. So you started watching it just in time.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought I was gonna put this on as background noise, but I was like, wow, they're really committing to this, and I really like how it's not it's super serious. It's not
no, it's so quirky too.
yeah, like they don't take themselves that seriously, and. But yet there's these background stories like
so much heart to the characters,
right? Like the robot guy, is his name Robot Man? Is that his name?
So let's see. Now I'm blanking on it.
Yeah,
it is something.
I believe it's Robot Man. But his backstory with his daughter and his wife, how he
it is just Robot Man.
Yeah, it is. How he misremembered his history, that he was the one driving the car and got into the accident, and a Negative Man's backstory where he's gay and he has a family, and a wife, and he's trying to, figure out which way he wants to take his life, and then the accident happens. Or Rita, where she's like this actress, and this terrible thing happens to her where her face melts off, her body turns into goop. I just really like the backstories, and it's great that they don't take themselves seriously, but then they have these really deep, heartbreaking backstories.
Mm-hmm. Just get fully invested in it.
Yeah. You're kind of rooting for them, even though they're kind of a bunch of losers and misfits, really. But yeah, it's they're kind of like they're sort of the anti-Justice League, or the anti-Avengers, right?
Mm-hmm. They're actually the kind of, if you want to make their biggest comparison, it would be the X-Men, really.
Right. A goofy X-Men.
Yeah. You think about it, they live in a mansion. Their leader is in a wheelchair, is super smart and a professor. They have these abilities that you would think some mutants would have. So they're kind of referred to almost as the original X-Men.
Are they an old team? Like an old were they created a long time ago?
Yeah, they first debuted in the 60s.
Oh wow. Yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah, I love this show. It's I know you watched it, and I haven't listened back, and I don't remember if you were like this show is really good. I'm sure you were.
Yeah, I was.
Like the TMNT comic, you're right about this too.
So you should be paying attention to me more, Dane.
I guess
have you finished the first season yet, or are you still in the middle of it?
No, I am on. Hold on, let me look really quick. I am on. Is it? I forget the rat's name. Is it Colonel Crackers or something?
I forget it too. That's right.
Episode 8. I'm on episode 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Or it's like General Crackers or something.
It was being manipulated to get revenge on the Doom Patrol for, I believe, was it his wife or his mother or someone in his family got run over by the truck as they were pulling the bus. Yeah, okay.
And he wants to get revenge.
Yeah. Like crazy quirky stories like that, but it works so well in the show when you watch it, man. It's just great. It takes all that stuff and melts it into one just great hour of entertainment.
Or my my favorite part was when they go to that scientist's lab, the Nazi scientist's lab,
Uh-huh.
in somewhere in South America, right? And you know how how they're going on the Jurassic Park tour
Yeah, that's right.
throughout the whole mansion, and then they have to sit down and watch the puppet show,
Uh-huh.
and they're explaining his sort of background, like, oh, he was living in Germany, and then this thing happened, and then he was all of a sudden a bad doctor, so he decided to move to South America for health reasons after the war. Yeah, sure, it was health reasons.
Yeah, man.
But anyway, yeah, this show, it's great. It's a great show.
Yeah, it gets a little more crazy by the end of the season, but yeah, just as good.
Better Cyborg, I would say.
Cyborg's great in this, yeah.
A little more fleshed out Cyborg.
Yep.
Because Cyborg, you only see a glimpse of him in Batman versus Superman, and then Justice League, he's literally a background character.
Well, I think the Snyder Cut will fix that with fleshing him out more. But as of right now, this is definitely the more fleshed out version of the character on screen in live action. Yeah. It's a great portrayal by him too. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, I've been watching Doom Patrol. It's a great show. I almost give it a 5 out of 5. So 4.5.
Yeah, so hopefully maybe it'll be a 5 once you finish the season and get ready for season 2. Have you watched the season 2 trailer?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I don't that's probably a good idea before you finish the season.
Yeah.
I'll just say they're bringing in a character from the comics, one of the main characters from the Doom Patrol comics, who has some crazy powers, which should make for a really interesting season 2, even more crazier season 2.
So would I know this character?
If you're not familiar with Doom Patrol at all before watching the series, then no. Yeah. But you'll see the character by the time season 1 starts wrapping up. You'll know who I'm talking about.
All right. So yeah, I've been watching that show.
Cool. Glad you're on board with that one.
I've been reading the Ninja Turtles comics, which I love. Oh my God, Tim.
So where are you at with that one now? I know you got to issue 50, which was a huge issue.
Dark Water. They just got Alopex back from Alaska.
Okay.
But issue 50. Oh my God.
Man. When I first read that, I was like, dang, was not expecting that to happen.
I did not expect that to happen. Oh my God. So I didn't expect Splinter to kill Shredder. That was the biggest shock I've read in comics in a long time. Oh my God. And then he takes over as the leader of the Foot Clan.
See, that was the biggest surprise to me. And obviously we know in the course of this version of the Turtles, Shredder, or I should say Orokusaki and Hamato Yoshi have a relationship and worked in the Foot Clan. So it makes sense. But just as a Turtle fan from the early days of the first animated show in the 80s, seeing Splinter as leader of the Foot Clan was just kind of so surreal to me to see those words and those that path for Splinter be taken and him being the leader of the first of the Foot Clan. Like, wow, this is something I never thought I'd see, but it makes total sense. And it just, again, while this comic series is so great in subverting what you know about the TMNT franchise, but yet it makes all the sense in the world and just works so well in the story that it's telling.
But it wasn't only that and Splinter killing Shredder. It's also the lead up to it, where Splinter is essentially just sitting there meditating while there's a whole battle going on. He's searching through his past to find a weakness for Shredder, and that ends up being an honorable ninja, I guess you could say, which makes me kind of like, are they samurai or are they ninja, because it seems like they're blending both.
Yeah,
things.
That's a good point.
But, I mean, I like it. I mean, it works perfectly but it's like, why didn't they just make them samurai? You know, I mean, I know it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but and I guess Teenage Mutant Samurai Turtles wouldn't really
doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well. Yeah.
but yeah, I just like how the sort of lead up to it, where he's searching his past, where Splinter was essentially wrath. He couldn't control his anger. Hamato couldn't control his anger, and Rokusaki couldn't. I don't know. Would attack dishonorably, I guess you could say. I don't know. I just like that whole lead up to him finally killing Shredder, which is really weird to say, because everything leading up to that issue was, Splinter was Hamato Yoshi was a pacifist now. He doesn't believe in conflict. And to see him do that, it's a great turn of character, I guess you could say. And just right before he does it, calling back to like, how they used to, daydream or they used to go deep into the forest and daydream about the great warriors they would become. And Splinter telling, I believe it's Splinter telling Shredder, I'll see you in the forest again. I just love that sort of callback, and it was just that perfect touch to, what they were building up to, and that sort of climactic killing of Shredder. It was so great, and Splinter taking over the Foot Clan, and how Mikey isn't really about that. He walked away. I mean, it's totally goes against his character, where he's like this optimistic guy.
You really start feeling for Mikey in these issues that follow this story arc. So how he views everything. This is like makes you really feel for him, as far as, like you said, someone who's always kind of supposed to be the happy-go-lucky turtle, the party dude, but he's one of the most emotional ones. Maybe not as emotional as Raph, but you just really see how this affects him and hurts him. It just makes for some really great stuff. And later on, as this story arc progresses.
Also, is Alapex's villain micro series worth reading?
Yeah,
that's the one that I really want to read, because she's become like one of these major characters that I thought was just a throwaway mutant sort of story. She's become like this. You go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, her micro series issue, and I don't know if you read Old Hobbs yet, but those are the two must reads, I think, for the villain micro series.
Okay. Yeah, because I haven't read any of them so far. Also, I'm sort of curious about what happened with April and Casey, the April and Casey series, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, I got that one. It's been a while since I've read it, but it does paint the picture as far as kind of how their relationship kind of hits a bump in the road, and kind of why they go on their separate ways for a little bit.
Yeah, but is it just about that, or is it about like?
No, it plays
into. Or does it play into the old gods?
Yeah, it plays into that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And like I texted you, Tim, like it's weird that I don't like the Splinter character anymore, because
I know
of the way he's going.
Yep. It's like, you hate to see it, but yet that's what makes it so good, because he does become an unlikable character. He does some stuff that makes you go, man, Splinter, how can you do this? And just
sure.
So later on in some stories and that happen, and some of the actions he takes, it's gonna make you go, what? And just seeing the turtles react to it, it's just like, wow. But again, it works so well.
because I'm at the part where, or what happened previously was they snuck into Dunn's building, I guess, lair, I guess you could say. And Splinter has, I forget her name. Is it Jenny?
Yeah.
Jenny, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, has Jenny kill Dunn, and then he tells him, like, I'm going to take all your money and I'm going to take all of your technology, and you're going to be okay with that. And then Dunn says, no, you're not. And then Jenny comes out of the shadows and kills him. And it's like, okay, that is not where I thought that the Splinter character was going as the leader of the Foot Clan, but okay. And I just really like his talk with, with Mikey, and he's like, Leo, and he's like, I want to protect you, but as the leader of the Foot Clan, I can't protect you guys, because I made this promise to your mom that I would always protect you guys. And maybe the best thing for you, or the best way I can protect you from all these evils, is for you to go on your own way, and for you to be the leader. And I was like, yeah, but why don't you just not be the leader of the Foot Clan and just be their dad?
Mm-hmm.
And I like I said, I'm at that point. I still have like 7 or 8 graphic novel, trade paperbacks to get through, so I'm not really sure where that's going. But as of right now,
it's definitely going somewhere. I'll say that.
right.
And not to spoil it, but pay attention to Jenica, or Jenny, as a character. Don't think of her just a side character. So there's
I definitely don't. Yeah.
So there's definitely stuff that's going to happen with her that's pretty important.
Yeah, I definitely don't, because you know how, I don't know if you remember, but the Turtles were getting all upset because Splinter wasn't explaining his whole plan to them. He was leaving certain parts of it out, like sending Casey to go take over the Purple Dragons again.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't really explaining all of his plans, like giving information to Dunn about who Harry was, and having the Phantoms kidnap Dunn. Kidnap Harry. How they he's not giving him the whole plot or the whole plan, and I had a feeling with Jenny, because she feels like she's dishonored, and all of that stuff, dishonor of the Foot Clan and all that stuff. That there was something more going. Maybe Splinter told Jenny to do something that we don't know about yet. So yeah, I'm keeping close to her too.
Yeah, I thought issue 50 was big. That's one of the best issues of the series, but man, some more big stuff's on the way for you.
Okay,
how'd you get closer to issue 100?
It feels like the only characters I can really trust right now are the Turtles, Angel, maybe April,
Alapex.
Alapex, yeah. but even with Alapex, she's still haunted by Kitsune. So,
That's true. I kind of forgot that aspect in the middle portion of this. So
I don't know where that's going. But yeah, again, like I said, read the Ninja Turtles comics. I was wrong. I was dead wrong.
You got to say that on every episode now. Just read the Ninja Turtles comics.
I know.
To make up for not reading after all these years.
But every time we do this podcast, it seems like something else big comes up. You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like I have to talk about it.
That's why the series is so great.
Splinter killing Shredder and all this other stuff. So, Yeah.
And I've said this before too. You gotta start watching the 2012 Nickelodeon series because I don't think you'll probably think it's as great as the IDW comics, but there's some great Splinter Shredder dynamics in that series as well, done differently, but I think just as good in its own way, with some great payoffs as well. So
yeah, you see, I've tried to watch it, but I feel like, see, this is my problem, Tim. I didn't grow up with the movies. I mean, I saw the movies. I saw the television. Was it 89 television show?
87, but it went
87.
forever. So
yeah, I saw the television show. I saw all the iterations of the Turtles. So I didn't really grow up with them, or I didn't really care about them as much. But what I do care about is this IDW comic. And I feel like this is my Batman year one. This is my Turtles year one. Right? This is the Turtles as I want them to be. Right? And so I watched the Nickelodeon show. And it's kind of different. And
yeah, it's different.
I'm just having a hard time getting into it.
Well, here's what I would suggest. Maybe once you're fully caught up with the IDW comics and you need a turtle fix and want more turtle stories, maybe that's when you should jump into a different iteration where you got the full complete run, or at least current up-to-date run of that story. You could start another one. And because that turtle series, the way it starts off, it ends in a much more interesting place, I will say. So I would, if you could just get through season one and not like fully form your opinion on it until you finish season one, I think that's where you have to really fully judge it on where you want to continue or not with it, for where it leaves things with the story. Because again, it goes to some really great places with Splinter and Shredder and the Turtle family dynamic.
I do like the Turtles designs, and I really, really like Shredder's design in the show.
Yeah.
It's really great. But yeah, this IDW comic it's revolutionary.
No argument for me on that.
I gotta say, oh my God, it's so great. It might slow down on this upcoming Friday, the 19th. Because that's when The Last of Us 2 comes out. And I have to button down the hatches and beat it, because next month the Ghost of Tsushima comes out, and I really want to play that one too.
Yeah, so that's really good. Yeah. Shifting gears a little bit from comics to video game, what did you think of the PS5 reveal?
Didn't see a lot of games that I really want to play.
Interesting.
Beyond that sort of sci-fi-ish looking one.
With like that guy in almost kind of like an astronaut suit takes that girl up to space at the end. That's the one you're talking about? Or
no, the one with the woman.
Oh, okay. Where she relives like her death over and over. Okay.
Something with time. Like there's some kind of sort of time thing going on. That one. Also Stray.
Oh, Stray's gonna be game of the year next year.
I have an orange cat. I have an orange cat, and I'm gonna be buying that one. I don't know why.
No, I'm right there with you. I think every cat owner who's a gamer is gonna be buying it. I hope you can customize your cat though. Like choose a different look for the cat. It could be a tabby cat, tuxedo cat, or the orange cat. Just have it be a customizable one. That would be great. But I actually think it looks really good. I actually was surprised of how many games was, especially compared to Microsoft's reveal, which was really lackluster to me. But there's actually quite a few games on the PS5 reveal that caught my interest. I think looked really great. I'm getting that first look at the Spider-Man Miles Morales. That's coming out this year. I was like, wow, that's a huge surprise, but that's a great launch title to have. But Ratchet and Clank, I'm a big fan of that game series, and it's been a while since we had a new installment, and this one looked absolutely fantastic. This is actually one of the first next gen games that I've seen that's making me really think, oh wow, this looks next gen, because not only just the graphics, but the way the environment transition in an instant, where you're just going to all these different environments and levels in a moment of seconds, which I don't think I've ever seen before in a video game, and just how seamless it is, and just how detailed it is when you go into these new environments so quick. It blew me away. So just in general, being a fan of that franchise, but yet seeing the things it's going to do with this next gen technology, this looks really, really cool. So Ratchet and Clank is high on my list for next gen games. That looks really good. And then what was the name of it? I forget the exact name of it, but it was almost one of those time loop games. It was the first person shooter where you're being hunted out by these different assassins. That has a cool feel to it that reminded me of the old game called Time Splitters. That was a quirky first person shooter game that I always loved on the PS2, and this one had a little bit of vibe to that. That was a different type of first person shooter that looked really cool. So that was another one, and then there was another really cool new one that was there. But see, that's the thing that I think was.
I was more interested in the technology, like how much better are the graphics going to look on the games, and I don't feel like you could really judge it by, or see it, I guess you could say, with the more cartoony games like Ratchet and Clank or Stray or whatever. And so I was looking at I'm not interested in the game really, but Gran Turismo. I was trying to look do they look more more realistic cars or whatever? And I gotta say, I can't really see the difference.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, because car games look great already.
Yeah, I mean they look great already, but I was looking at there's certain shots of the interior of the cars, and the driver's hands going steering or whatever, and the interior of the car, the dashboard, and the stick shift and the sort of speed stuff. I was looking at the odometer and stuff, and I was looking at that, and I was like, I can't really see a difference. I don't know if you could, but
yeah, not really. I mean, Gran Turismo has always been known for pushing the envelope with racing games and their graphics. I mean, when Gran Turismo 3 came out on the PS2, that was, I think, a game changer as far as racing games and just graphics looking realistic in general. That blew me away. Obviously, things got better since then, but again, it almost comes to a point where how much better can it look? And I'm sure this one will look the best there is, but it's not such a substantial jump that you're really noticing it. But one that really also blew me away was Horizon Zero Dawn 2. That looked really great. And in certain...
Did you play the first one?
Horizon Zero Dawn 2.
Yeah. Yeah, did you play the first one?
Oh.
Yeah.
No, actually, I didn't, but I have it. I got it on sale on the PS Store, the PlayStation Store. It's having a sale. I eventually want to play it, and seeing the trailer for the second one really makes me want to play it, because I've heard great things about it, and the second one looks really, really good.
Yeah, that's one of the best games I've played for PS4. It's a really good story. I just don't want to spoil it for you.
Thanks.
The gameplay is really good. The combat, the bow. You have an electric sword, which is really cool. The stealth aspect is really cool, and the crafting system is really well done. So, yeah, I think you're gonna have fun with that one.
Yeah, I put on that list. But the other game I was thinking of, I was trying to remember. It was kind of one of those quirky ones you were mentioning. I forget the name of it, but it's that one where you're kind of this adventurer, like an Indiana Jones type character, traveling the world, facing these different monsters, and then it cuts to moments that you see his butler just walking around the house doing these mundane things, I guess showing the contrast of his life. The graphics are very cartoony and stylized, but the concept and the gameplay of it looked really good and interesting. Kind of didn't fit the graphic style, but it showcased, I think, the graphical power in a different way, having that art style. So that was another one that kind of jumped out at me as far as something being unique and different that looked good. I think that's just overall the whole reveal. They just had a lot of games that look different and unique from each other. That just gives you a lot of variety to choose from on the PS5 when it comes out. That's, I think, it did a much better job than Microsoft did with their reveal, showing these games that were all kind of looking the same almost.
Yeah. And I guess that's kind of the point, of these reveals, like the technology reveals or whatever. It's like you got to show Ratchet and Clank, but then you also have to show Horizon Zero Dawn 2, or Into the West, is it called?
Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but you have to show like a variety of games, and I was more focused on like the more realistic, quote unquote realistic games.
Sure.
And see, like, okay, so like is the facial syncing better? Can you see real emotion on the characters' faces? Like, does it look like a person reacting to something? Like, I don't know, the Last of Us 2 trailer, right? I mean, it wasn't in the showcase, but like when the two characters kiss, does it look like an actual kiss, or does it look like two dolls smashing their face together? It's sort of that sort of thing I was looking for, rather than the sort of cartoony stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna go PS5, Tim.
Well, I'll eventually get both. Always got to try to get both of the main console. Just a matter of how far apart. And I'm mainly a Microsoft guy. That's where my main console of games I play on. But PS5, that sold me as far as wanting to get it right away. I mean, just with the new Spider-Man game with Miles Morales launching with it this holiday. Hopefully, it doesn't get pushed back. But that's, I think, going to be a good system seller to have, knowing how great the first one was. So I might be getting both sooner than later. And I might have some extra income to put away to maybe get that, because I think I mentioned for the 311 concert I was supposed to go to this summer that got canceled, where I kind of got the VIP seating for that. Sure. And now it's going to get refunded because of it being canceled. So I might have some extra money to use for console purchases down the line. So we'll see.
I think I saw this morning there was a leak or whatever, or some website in Asia had like pre-orders up already for the PS5, and it's gonna be like $700.
Man, it can't be that expensive. They had to learn the lesson with the PS3 $600 launch price tag.
Yeah. I don't think it's gonna be that expensive.
No.
Yeah, maybe like the special ultra edition of the PS5, where you get like a special edition controller with the magic, I don't know, stuff. I'm not so sure about the controller yet. It has those old school, or at least it looks that way. It has those old school N64/Xbox buttons that I don't really like.
It is the first PlayStation controller that's really kind of breaking the mold as the design of it.
Yeah.
1 through 4, they all kind of have that core design that it stuck with. That I always loved. I love the PlayStation controller. So we'll see how this one works out, because it is definitely more different than any other one has been.
Yeah, it has those slippery Xbox, original Xbox/Xbox 360 buttons that I don't really like, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, who knows? I might eventually, like, they'll release a classic PS5 controller version or something like that, where it's new but has that old classic feel to it.
I'm surprised they're bringing back the touchpad. I mean, they're continuing the touchpad, because I mean, beyond, I don't know, 1 or 2 things, I barely use the touchpad for anything.
Yeah, it's mainly just used to bring up maps most of the time, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with the maps, you're not using the interactive touch thing to.
Yeah, you just press it to bring it up, and that's about it.
Yeah. you're not rubbing your finger on it like a mouse or a touchpad on a laptop. So I'm surprised they're continuing with that, but I guess that's what makes them different from Xbox, I guess.
And I guess no reason not to have it either. I guess if people are familiar with it, might as well just keep it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not expensive to put on there or something, but
one thing I do hope the controller has is, or that the at least the Xbox has, Xbox One is I hope that this is going to be hard to explain. There's haptic feedback on each trigger. I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Like if you play dang it, I forgot the name of the game. Hold on.
That type of stuff I hardly notice or pay attention to while I'm playing. It's just kind of feels like the rumble as the normal rumble goes for a controller.
Yeah, well, you see, I'm a PlayStation guy, so like the first time I used the Xbox One controller, I was like, oh, like it's totally separate. Like the vibration, there's individual vibration.
Yeah, I'm so used to it. I was like, I barely noticed it.
But yeah. Anyway, I just hope that they sort of bring that to the PlayStation controller, because it's a little thing, and I'm sure it'll cost them thousands of dollars. But I don't know. I just hope they bring that to the Xbox. I mean, to the PlayStation.
Yeah. So overall, I thought it was a really nice reveal to kind of showcase of how good the games look, and now we just got to find out release date and price, because the price is going to be the big thing. So yeah. I'm guessing between 400 and 500. I think 500 is going to be the most expensive. I expect it to be like either 400 or 450.
Yeah, you see, I think it's going to be 500 to start off with, and then 600 for the, I don't know, whatever that was, special edition,
the digital only edition. Yeah. Because that's the one I'm kind of leaning toward getting, because I imagine it's not going to have a disk drive, and it's going to have a bigger hard drive than the standard one, so it can hold more, I guess, digital games on there. So that's the one I want to get, because I'm mainly getting digital games now. So hopefully that's not the one that's more expensive.
That is going to be the more expensive one, because storage is at a premium. But unfortunately,
but if it doesn't have a disk drive and won't be able to play Blu-rays and 4K movies, then maybe that'll make it a little cheaper.
Yeah, I guess.
Or maybe they'll just be exactly the same. Who knows?
Yeah. Controversial, but I do like the design, because I know a lot of people are making fun of it.
Yeah, I liked it a lot too.
Yeah. It's really edgy, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so that is a good word for it. It looks futuristic.
Yeah. Sharp corners. Looks like it's essentially a sandwich. Yeah. It's an ice cream sandwich is what it looks like.
See, I hope it comes in a black color, because I'm just so used to PlayStation systems being black. Also, starting with the PS2. I know the original one was gray, but just the PS2 on all the other consoles I had were black, until I got this red Spider-Man PS4 version. But before that, I had the black PS4. So it's kind of weird to see like a Sony PlayStation console just be that bright white colored.
Did you see the mock-up of the Spider-Man Miles Morales special edition PS5?
No.
I don't think it's a official one, but it looks really cool.
Yeah.
With the red and the black.
That would look cool.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna go PS5. I'm a PlayStation gamer. They have the better exclusives. Sorry, Tim.
No, that's a good argument. I think Microsoft blew it on their reveal, not showing any of their exclusives like Halo. I think that would be one they'd want to show off right away to show off their new console, but I'll still have to wait on that.
Do people still care about Halo?
Yeah, definitely. I do. I know it definitely has a big fan base.
Gears of War.
I haven't really played a lot of the more recent games on there, but the original ones were fun.
I don't think I've ever played a Gears of War game.
No, they're fun. They're really good action combat games.
Is it
especially when you play in co-op
shooter?
It's third person, actually.
Oh, third person.
The cover system on it's really good.
I'm just trying to think of Xbox exclusives. Forza.
I don't really care too much about the racing games, but I know it is a big exclusive for them. For those who really like racing games. PlayStation
better exclusives.
I would agree with that. That's why I like to have both consoles for those exclusives.
Well, if you had to pick one, Tim, right now, which one would you pick?
It would probably be the PS5. But the cool thing about Microsoft version, what they're going to do, and I hope PS5 has that, is their system to where if you have an Xbox One, let's say because Halo 5 comes out, is going to be a launch title, but it's not Halo 5, but the next Halo game, but it's going to be on Xbox One also. I could buy let's say I wait a little bit to get the Xbox One Series X. If I buy the new Halo game on Xbox One, I'll be able to play the updated enhanced version once I get the next Xbox system. It's going to be that thing that once you buy a game, it's universal no matter what Xbox system you're playing it on. You don't have to buy it again to get the new enhanced version. You'll automatically update to that version, which I think is a great feature, which should become a standard for all video game consoles, that once you get the upgraded systems, because it just makes it so much better for consumers to purchase those games, and just knowing that they'd have the new enhanced version on once they decide to make the jump to next gen. It'd make the jump a lot more easier.
Has PlayStation said anything about older games, like all your PS4 games?
They're kind of being coy on that. That's another cool thing that the Xbox Series X is going to have. It's going to be backwards compatible with the last version, which I think is another important feature for next gen consoles to have. So hopefully Sony will realize that as well.
Okay, so that means they're not.
It might be a bare bones version of it or something, where like only a handful of games maybe will be backwards compatible. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
That would be disappointing.
Which means I'm gonna have to wait for games to come out. Not like I did with the PS4. I bought it. And, that wasn't a wise decision because there wasn't a lot of games. I forget what games early in the console's life.
There was the infamous game, Second Son.
Infamous Second Son. Yeah, right. That was the big launch title, which I bought, and which wasn't really worth it.
Yeah, I heard it wasn't that great. I like the first two Infamous games, but
what was the Xbox One launch title? It was that Rome game?
Yeah, they didn't have a great launch selection either, but that was supposed to be their big first exclusive. I don't even remember the name of it, but that wasn't great either.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's always tricky with launches of new consoles. Those, like the first few games, sometimes they really don't. It's not the best showcase of what this next gen systems can do. So you're gonna have to give it a little bit. But once a system does launch with like a great first AAA title that sells you on what the system can do, that's always a great thing. But it's just kind of rare when it happens these last few generations.
But anyway, that's
the next gen's here, or almost here. And
that's the next generation.
Gonna start to adapt as gamers. Yeah. So start saving up and getting ready. Hopefully GameStop will have good trade-in deals for your old systems. See, that's why I think the transition to Xbox is going to be smoother. I know a lot of the stuff I have on my original Xbox, I'll be able to get on the next system, and I'll be able to trade it in no problem and bring the price down. Sony, I'm not too sure yet. I might have to keep the PS4 for a while. But we shall see. But other than that, the last bit of movie news I was going to mention was that Wonder Woman 1984 now has another new release date. It's been pushed back again. It's supposed to come out in August, but still with the uncertainty of movie theaters opening up, it's slowly starting to happen. I think just this week, as of yesterday, most theater chains got the okay to open up again. But it's still going to be a while, I think, for things to get totally back to normal. So Wonder Woman 1984 will now be coming out October 2nd, 2020. So still a little bit of a wait, another release date change, but we'll just have to be patient again. So I think the first big movie to come out, because Warner Brothers pushed back a lot of stuff, because Tenet, Christopher Nolan's next movie, is going to come out at the end of July when it's supposed to come out in the middle of July. And I believe to replace that, they're re-releasing Inception in some theaters and going to have a sneak peek of Tenet. So again, it's going to be a weird, I think, first opening process when theaters start to reopen again and new movies start to come out. So we'll see. I'll have to wait to see how it goes. But I think Tenet is going to be the first big new release to hit theaters in July. Then hopefully we'll see where things go from there. And Wonder Woman sticks to this final, hopefully, release date of October 2nd. But with that, we can go ahead and get into our review section, which for me is going to be reviewing the latest issues of Batman: The Adventure Continues. Since our last episode, 2 more issues have come out for that series, and I will be reviewing both of them. But before I get into those reviews, I've got to throw out the spoiler warning on there because I'll be going into details as to what happens in those issues. So if you don't want to know, might want to hold off on listening to this part. But if you have, you can hear what I have to say about these latest issues of Batman: The Adventure Continues. But as always, we got to have a rating scale for this episode. And Dane, what do you think it should be?
Well, before we get to the rating scale, I have to ask you, Tim. So is Batman: The Adventure Continues, or The Adventures Continue, is it worth reading?
I say definitely yes. Especially if you look how cheap the issues are. They're just 99 cents. And you're getting continuations of Batman the Animated Series and classic comic characters who never appeared in the show in this universe for the first time, written by Alan Burnett and Paul Dini. Yeah, to me, it's a no-brainer. I really like what they're doing and setting up. And because I think they're creating this mystery, as I mentioned in my reviews, surrounding Jason Todd. And I just cannot wait to see how he fits into all this and into the timeline. And that alone is just making me invested and just wanting to keep reading to see how he's going to be brought into the animated series universe. But they're doing a great job continuing not only stories with these characters we know from the animated series, but now with Deathstroke in the mix for the first time. They're just doing a great job of bringing him into the animated series and just doing a great take on him. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth it.
Okay. So our rating scale for this episode is going to be things that Tim reads, watches, plays, that Dane in 5 years realizes is good.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's so fitting and so true.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could say the same thing about Batman: The Adventure Continues with that. So hopefully it won't take you 5 years this time. But for issues number 4 and 5, these kind of play out as one long issue, if you ask me, because the way basically these 2 issues is a fight between Deathstroke and Robin taking on Firefly, and the course of that story plays out in just these 2 issues. So it feels like one big issue here. So Robin is put on curfew by Batman as he was supposed to help him take down the Mad Hatter. But Batman tells him he has to go home. And Tim's not too happy about that. But as he's riding home, he sees Deathstroke enter a building. So he goes in there. It's like an entomology pavilion building with tons of bugs and insects that are there. Obviously, Firefly wants to go there for obvious reasons. But Robin runs into Deathstroke, and he gives him the spiel on Firefly. Tim talks about how Batman took him down. They refer to the episode Torch Song, which the animated series first introduced their version of Firefly. But Deathstroke goes on to tell Tim that there is this job Firefly took on that backfired on him, where he just got really burned and messed up his face. And now he's really living up to the name Firefly, where his face is just all burnt up and kind of looks disfigured. And where he really needs that suit. And he has an enhanced suit here that we get to see. And Deathstroke's been hired to take him down because he's saying he's planning this big attack on Gotham City, and he's hired by the government to take him down before that happens. So Deathstroke and Robin team up to fight Firefly once he shows up. And it was cool. I liked how we got to see this dynamic of Deathstroke and Tim working together, because this story arc is called Mentors, and it's trying to establish how Deathstroke is interfering and trying to replace Batman as Tim's mentor and plant the seeds as far as making Tim want to believe that Deathstroke is the better mentor for him to have other than Batman. So Deathstroke's working that angle with Tim. And again, I just love this dynamic that they're working here with this rivalry they're already establishing between Deathstroke and Batman here. And it's being used through his partners like Robin and Batgirl that Deathstroke is using to get to Batman and kind of beat him in that way sort of aspect. So we get this fight sequence between Batman, or I should say Deathstroke, Robin, and Firefly. That was pretty fun. And it takes, like I said, over the course of these 2 issues, the first one ends with Firefly kind of putting Deathstroke and Robin in a corner, about to burn him, and then the next issue picks up with that fight continuing on. And Batman easily takes down the Mad Hatter, but once after he's done dealing with the Mad Hatter, he sees the person who's been spying on him, or he's noticed been spying on him these last few nights, and he's trying to finally get him before he runs away. And he almost has him this time, but he's just a few seconds short, and he's unable to find out who's been watching him over all this time, which we know is Jason Todd, but Batman doesn't know that yet. And that's part of the mystery that's surrounding this series so far, is just what's Jason's angle and when is Batman going to find out? And just, again, like I said, how is Jason just going to fit into the whole grand scheme of things of the Batman the Animated Series timeline? I just cannot wait to find out. So once Batman is through with taking down the Mad Hatter and unable to catch Jason Todd as he was spying on him, he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred tells him that Tim didn't come home and cut off the line of communication, and Batman's trying to find him, and he sees smoke coming out of the building he's in, and he's able to locate where him and Deathstroke are at and fighting Firefly. And Batman actually comes in to take down Firefly rather easily, punches him, takes down his new suit. In typical Batman fashion, Firefly just didn't stand a chance. So he defeats him. Firefly, though, makes his escape. He just explodes one of the walls and causes a minor explosion and escapes. So after that, Batman tells Robin to go home, not too happy with him. And he again confronts Slade here, telling him he doesn't like how close he's getting to his partners, and how he's saying, well, he doesn't mean any harm, but I'm more approachable, it seems, than you are to them as a mentor. So I just like this dynamic that they're having between Deathstroke and Batman here. Obviously, Batman doesn't trust him. Deathstroke's trying to play the angle that he means no harm, but he's out there really to take down Batman, as it has been established at the ending of previous issues. But in this one, it really drives home the point that he's doing all this to take down Batman because he was hired by someone to do it. And in this one, at the end of issue 5, we find out who exactly hired him, because once Slade gets back home, he finds out that his partner, Sonny, was actually Firefly, not Garfield Lins. They staged the whole thing just, again, to try to gain that trust between him and Robin, and to use that to fully take down Batman. And the person who hires him is not happy that it's taken this long, and that person is Lex Luthor. And as we see him communicating with Slade at the end of this issue, he wasn't planning on all these theatrics and just wants Batman taken down ASAP because of how Batman humiliated him in the first story arc with him and Superman in that big robot suit. So he hired Slade to take down Batman. But Slade knows you can't just attack Batman head on and expect to beat him. You have to kind of catch him off guard, play the long game here, and just have patience. And that's how the best way to take down Batman. And as we see Slade tell that to Lex, we see Jason listening in on this conversation, and he has a shocked look on his face, knowing that Slade is actually not out to help Batman, but to kill him. So the table's being set for the different players in this game that Lex is orchestrating, and just what this series has been building up to. It might be coming to a head pretty soon between Deathstroke, Lex, and Jason Todd. So again, just more building up to what I think is going to be a really interesting story with all these characters coming together, and it just makes me excited to find out. So this issue, or this series, I should say, continues to be entertaining, and just as an animated series fan, just me eating up all this stuff and new elements they're bringing into this universe, like I said, with Deathstroke and Jason Todd, and creating that mystery. I just love it a lot. So these ones probably weren't the best of the series so far. The first few before these ones were probably the standouts, more so than these two, but again, they're still solid and still entertaining comics to read in the animated series universe. So I'm going to give this 3 out of 5 things that Tim reads, watches, and plays that Dane will realize is really good in 5 years.
That's a lot of things, Tim.
Yes, so you got more stuff to look forward to in the years to come, Dane, that are actually really good. So, yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. So, unless there's anything else, Dane, I'll throw it to you for the outro.
Oh, that is it. So just go over to the BatmanUniverse.net, Facebook.com/BatmanUniverse, Twitter handles at BatmanUniverse. The show's Twitter handle is at Bat-Fans Podcast. Tim's Twitter handle is at TimG311. And my Twitter handle is at Dane Cipriano. You can rate and review us on iTunes. And you can email the show at batfans@gmail.com. So like we say at the end of every single episode, Tim.
We love each and every one of you with all of our Tim recommended hearts.
That's a good one. See you guys next time.
See you next time, everybody.
Sun dies under a Gotham moon. Cry